Vintage Guitar people, welcome to Have Guitar Will Travel, presented by Vintage Guitar Magazine. With your host, me, James Patrick Regan, otherwise known as Jimmy from the Deadlies. And today I'm speaking with Ohana Ukulele custom shop builder, Brad Kahabka. In our conversation, Brad tells us about his path to working with ukuleles, working in a music store, the military, getting a fine arts degree, and eventually doing setups on ukuleles at Ohana. Brad explains what it takes to make custom ukuleles, a CNC machine, a laser engraver, and a lot of handwork, sanding and gluing, and putting together the fine details. Brad talks about his musical history, going to GIT in Hollywood, playing in punk bands, and following the Warped Tour. Brad talks about how he learned to build ukuleles by reverse engineering the defective ones that came through the shop, as well as doing repairs on vintage Kamaka and Martin ukuleles. Brad tells us about the woods he works with and the qualities of the different woods, as well as the difficulties of working with certain types of woods, and he explains the bubble ukulele, which is something you need to see to understand. Brad walks us through the ordering process of the custom shop and the cost of the instruments he builds. You can find out all you want to know about custom Ohana ukuleles and see photos of Brad's work at their website, ohanacustomshop.com. That's ohanacustomshop.com. Please subscribe, like, comment, share, and most of all, review this podcast. I'd really appreciate it. And please support Vintage Guitar Magazine and all the wonderful things they do for us guitar players, because guess what? They do so many wonderful things for us guitar players, and sometimes ukuleles. Here's my friend Brad. How are you, Brad?
Hey, James, I'm good.
Good. How do you pronounce your last name?
Kahabka.
Kahabka?
Yeah, Kahabka. The B's like later on, yeah.
All right. Are you Hawaiian, or where's that name come from?
Yeah, I was like born in Buffalo, New York. I guess it's like German.
Okay.
Yeah, German, kind of somewhere around there. European, okay. German and Polish.
All right. Not Hawaiian.
Oh, not Hawaiian, no. No, people said that. They've said it's like Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
But then they see me and they're like, yeah.
I was just going from the beginning part of your last name, the Keha.
Yeah. There's a lot of like vowels in there, so people think it's like it's Hawaiian a lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah. And you work for, a ukulele manufacturer, so.
Right. I guess it probably helps, right?
Yeah. How long have you worked there at Ohana?
I've been here for like 6 or 7 years or something, but only in the custom shop for I think the last 3.
What were you doing previous to Ohana?
Before that, like directly before that, I was in the Army.
Okay. Wow.
And then before that, I had worked in some music stores.
Okay.
For a while. I had worked one in West LA, and then I moved back to New York for a bit, and I worked for one over there for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then I joined the Army.
Okay.
As a mechanic.
Okay. When did you start making ukuleles? Like, did you start when you started working for Ohana that you actually started making ukuleles?
Yeah, it was. I was doing setups, instrument setups, kind of the whole time I was in school again, and then I just about 3 years ago I just started designing and building them in shop here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All by hand, or are we using CNC machines, or?
I do have CNC machines. Yeah, I have that, and it's kind of like I like a mix of traditional and modern. So the shop is, I've had a couple people come in here and say the shop is like quite modern actually. Because I have like a CNC machine, and then I have a laser engraver, like a big laser engraver.
Wow.
But I also have all the chisels and hand tools and all that stuff. It's mostly, I wanted to automate certain processes so it doesn't take me forever to build something.
Yeah.
And like the consistency, like I didn't want to hand carve every single neck. I just wanted to design it, make it consistent. So that was kind of the plan with that.
Yeah, make it right the first time, and then you.
Right, exactly. But most of it, it's all assembled by hand. All the bodies are assembled and sanded by hand, and so it's like a big. It's a mix. It's like my regular. My personal art practice too is like I'm a traditional like oil painter, like very hands-on kind of person.
Yeah.
So I prefer not to do digital stuff, even though I kind of have to.
Sure. And are you really a painter, or are you just using it as an example?
No, I'm a painter. Yeah.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. I went to Cal State Long Beach. I have a bachelor's in fine arts for drawing and painting.
Oh wow, right on.
Yeah, yeah, I do like. He was doing like big, large scale oil paintings, like 6 foot paintings, and
Wow.
I work a little smaller now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes a long time, but it's fun. I like doing that.
And you worked in a music store early on. Did you were you playing guitar or what were you playing?
Yeah, back in the early mid 2000s or something, I went to college right out of high school. Right, I went to Binghamton University for mechanical engineering,
Okay.
and then after like 2 years, I decided I didn't like that, and I just kind of dropped everything and got on a plane to Hollywood, and I went to GIT, the Musicians Institute. I went to the GIT program
Okay.
for guitar performance. So I was just playing electric guitar, punk metal bands,
Wow.
that kind of thing. And I was playing like shows in and around LA and some surrounding areas for a couple of years. And I had bands back in college and home, like punk bands
Uh-huh.
back in New York. So yeah, traditionally I'm electric guitar player is my background. Yeah,
Okay. All
and I
right.
did that for years. And like I grew up in the days of the Warped Tour when it was big. Now it's back again, which is cool. But
Yeah. Yeah.
when it was like first starting out, I was super into that. Follow the tour around the country, and um,
Did you
yeah, a lot of
feel
yeah, a lot of like
you literally followed the tour around the country?
sometimes I would follow them like up East Coast,
Okay.
kind of like
Wow.
New Jersey down to the Carolinas. I think we went, and then
Yeah.
now they're actually coming to Long Beach this year, so I'm gonna go. So it's kind of like come full circle, which
Yeah,
is interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. When was the first time you ever built an instrument at Ohana? Like, did you build guitars beforehand?
No, I didn't. I don't really have any woodworking background.
Uh-huh.
My background's primarily in like metalworking because
Sure.
I would do in high school. I was a part of the welding program and did like the titanium solar car welding. And um, my father, he wasn't a mechanic, but he would fix family cars and motorcycles for himself and things like that. So
Yeah.
a lot of my background is in like metal work and mechanic work. But as far as like building the first instrument, that was here at Ohana in the shop.
Wow.
And what I ended up doing was just after I kind of built the shop out, I was just kind of reverse engineering defective instruments that we had laying around, and then I would make my own improvements and tweak it a little bit, kind of
Yeah.
how I wanted things to be, and change the shape. And so I kind of like figured out, like reverse engineered how I wanted to build instruments,
Yeah.
and then from there, that's kind of how I figured out how to do it.
Yeah. How did you end up working at Ohana?
After the army, I ended up here in Long Beach. I kind of just like picked it on a map because it was in between LA and Orange County,
Sure.
which I had lived in Orange County very briefly. So I just said, I'll try Long Beach because I like the water, and it's kind of central to all these places. And it ended up working out pretty well because the Cal State Long Beach has a really amazing art program,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
one of the best in the country. Now that I've done it, and now that I'm aware, it's really crazy that I ended up where I ended up. But
Sure.
so when I was going to Long Beach City College, Lewis had posted on the job board there for an instrument technician
Uh-huh.
part time. So I just applied. I got that job, and then the whole time I was in City College and our community college and university, I was doing ukulele setups part time.
Wow.
Pretty much when I wasn't like at school or in the studio, I was here doing instrument setups.
Yeah.
And then we would go to the NAMM show, and I'd set up for the NAMM show. And I got to meet a lot of people, and kind of like, I couldn't keep meeting the same people over and over every year. So you kind of like become kind of part of the community that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now that I'm the builder, it's very different for me because a lot of these people I have relationships with now, and a lot of the wood suppliers and even the factory. I've talked to those guys, and they kind of pick my brain, which is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
Asking me how I do things, and asking for some advice. So it's kind of come full circle again. It's interesting.
Yeah. Um, How hard is it to set up a ukulele? Like that, it doesn't seem very forgiving because there's no truss
Right.
rod or anything.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, as long as your neck angle is good and the neck is straight, it's pretty straightforward. You can press some frets,
Uh huh.
and then basically you want to just uh, you know round off the frets so the fret edges aren't sharp,
Sure,
that
sure.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Make sure the saddle height is where it needs to be
yeah,
was one of the major factors, because things coming out of a mass-produced factory, they're not quite tweaked the way, they're not set up individually. They're
yeah,
set up mass-produced, so you kind of got to tweak them a little bit here and there.
yeah, yeah,
Deepen the nut slots a little bit, little things like that. Oil the fretboards because they've been on a container ship for 2 months, so you got to oil everything and rehydrate and
yeah.
that sort of thing. But I mean, for when I was in the music stores, I was kind of the Floyd Rose guy.
Sure.
So compared to that, this is really easy. The setup part was really easy, not the building part. But
Okay.
yeah, because I would do all the crazy Floyd Roses that no one else wanted to do. I'd get stuck with them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What types of woods are the hardest to work with?
The hardest one, I think, spalted maple is quite tricky to work with, especially for an acoustic instrument, just because it's the nature of it. It's kind of a half-rotten wood.
Okay.
So the more spalting it has, the more unstable it is.
Okay.
So those types of woods, you have to really go in there and stabilize it with super glue or some kind of other material.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it takes layers and layers to do that. And then finishing on top of it takes many more layers than normally because it soaks in so much.
Yeah.
So that kind of wood, and then redwood, like a burled redwood, is kind of similar to
Okay.
that. That redwood's quite soft,
Yeah.
so that's kind of difficult to work with also.
Yeah.
And then I do get surprised because one of the kind of philosophies at the shop was to work with unique wood that you don't really see too often
Okay.
in ukulele building.
Yeah.
So, like I have things that I've never even seen before, ironheart and redheart. And, I made a pistachio uke a
Wow.
couple months ago, which
Uh-huh.
I have 5 or 6 sets of pistachio, which is kind of rare to have.
Yeah.
And then all the spalted maple, and then we have a bunch of kind of spalted mangoes,
Uh-huh.
and I've been doing live edge redwood ukes,
Yeah.
and then all of what else do I have here? Tasmanian blackwood, which is kind of like an Australian koa,
Okay.
which you don't see too often. And then a lot of myrtles we have here too. Trying to think what else I have in there.
Yeah.
Just a lot of funky wood that you don't see in, like, traditionally ukuleles, just koa.
Yeah.
But I try and do basically everything else plus koa.
Yeah, of
Which
course.
is interesting.
And
Yeah.
did you look at have you gone back and looked at like old Martin ukuleles and old Kamaka ukuleles and stuff to see how they're put together?
I have, yeah. I've actually had a couple come into the shop for some repairs, some customers, and a lot of the glue that they used over time just kind of disintegrates, so
Sure.
they just kind of fall apart in your hands. I'm kind of working on one at the moment, actually. I had a Kamaka come in here. But, the old designs are very simple. Racing is very straightforward.
Yeah.
They're very traditionally just straight koa, simple design ukes and kind of chunky necks.
Yeah.
But you can see it's interesting to see the progression of, like, say, a more modern instrument compared to those kind of instruments. But I love vintage anything vintage. I drive vintage motorcycles. My car is like 30 years old, and so I'm always fixing stuff that's breaking. So I love to see how those kind of things function and how they were put together,
Yeah.
and then I can from it take away what I need to take away from that kind of stuff.
And over your shoulder there, is that the bubble ukulele?
This one is the bubble uke, yeah.
And how did you put together? Wow. And so the back and the sides are the same. Yeah. Oh my God. How hard was it to put that together? Like, what did
This
you?
was, and even the neck.
Yeah.
The
Oh my
neck has
God.
all these bubble plugs in it, and then I
Yeah.
put all these holes in the
Oh my
headstock,
goodness.
and then even down here at the end of the
Oh yeah.
fretboard is a bunch of holes.
That's
So
fantastic.
this uke was so like I learned traditionally luthiers when they build instruments seem to save all their sound holes and just kind of throw them on the bench. So I ended up having 30 or 40 sound holes sitting on the bench, and I think one morning at 3 or 4 in the morning I woke up and I was like, I need to make something for the NAMM show.
Yeah.
I have all these sound holes. Like, what can I do with these? And
Oh
it
wow.
just came to my head. Let me make a bubble uke. So these are basically, 80% of this uke is just sound holes from other instruments that I've created.
Oh wow.
And then I had to add different. I added some Purple Heart and some Paduke for some splashes of color in there.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of kept going more crazy with it. I put holes in the soundboard,
Mm-hmm.
like above the bridge, and then I put holes in the end of the fretboard and holes in the headstock. But I made sure it's all structurally stable because it's at the core of this instrument. It's koa,
Wow.
so it's basically like my design. It was glued on top of the koa. Like I lasered out my whole grid pattern.
Sure.
But then I had to cut all the circles individually, still with the laser, but individually. So I'm putting all these circles in one by one,
Yeah.
gluing them all together. And then when I did the sides, I was just crossing my fingers and hoping it would bend and not destroy itself. But it worked out really well.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And the sides just bent really well. You fill any gaps with like a little super glue or anything, whatever in there, and
Yeah.
then for the actual fretboard, so I scuba dive also, and I have some GoPro footage of me, and I actually did a large scale oil painting, a self portrait of me coming up to the surface, and the regulator with all the bubbles, it's like blowing up to the surface. So I have this really nice painting that I did, and I based the fretboard off of the regulators, the bubbles coming out of my regulator,
Okay.
coming to the surface. So that's what all the bubbles on the fretboard are
That's
from.
badass.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the inspiration is like a scuba diving sound hole bubble uke. And it's kind of koa based, but it's got every single other piece of wood in the shop I have here. Yeah. And then I have a maple neck. I like doing the maple necks because it's really stable, really dense.
Yeah.
And it's something, again, it's kind of untraditional for ukuleles. You don't see it too often. But I'm more of a, my electric guitar roots, so I'm used to maple necks
Sure,
and
sure.
other. I kind of tend to take a lot of guitar building techniques into ukulele,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. But this was a really cool project. And even on the inside of this, the whole thing is lasered on the inside with bubbles.
Oh.
And then the back strap has all these little tiny bubbles on it. I'm sure you can't see it.
I
But,
can't quite see that. But
we have some pictures I can send you.
yeah. So, if somebody wants an instrument from the custom shop, what's it going to cost them?
They range between, I think the cheapest one is, I want to say between 1,500 and average, I believe, is probably 7 or 8 at the high end.
Yeah.
I just did one recently that I made out of a piece of the tree, the famous piece of wood, and I think we listed that one for about 13,000.
Wow.
But that's really because the wood is so expensive and unique by itself. But
Sure.
like I think, for instance, on the high end of realistically what we could command for a price, I think between 6 and 8 is probably the high end of what I have. I think the bubble uke is probably up there
Yeah.
on the list. But we have dealer models, which are kind of just plain kind of koa. There's 3 of them. One of them is just a satin, very simple looking koa uke, and then there's a mid range, and then there's a high range where I put abalone on the outside, or abalone in the sound hole, that kind of thing. A little bit more fancy, and it's a nicer grade of koa, like really kind of high flame koa.
Uh-huh.
And that one, I believe, is up in the $2,000 range.
Okay.
But those are kind of the most affordable. Nothing out of the shop is going to come out of here for under 1,000.
Sure. And do people come to you with their ideas, or do you or is it all in your head? Like if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, I want a flying V ukulele," are you gonna? Can you make that for them?
I could make it for him. Yes, indeed, I could. I've had a couple requests like that, and the way this all started, really was I was kind of just making ukes here and figuring out how the construction worked, and I just said to myself one day, why don't I just try and make an inlay? Yeah. So I just sat down and I made this ridiculous octopus inlay. Like the whole fretboard was just octopus tentacles and
wow,
all over the place. And I took it to the NAMM show, and the people that bought it were the people that manufactured the laser machine that I used.
Oh wow,
to create all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think from that point on, the focus has been on the artistic creativity and design work.
Yeah.
But also that they have to play well and sound like, sonically good.
Yeah, of course.
And, but yeah, so I ended up just kind of continuing on that path, and I had made I made this one a while back, which is a seagull with the Santa Monica.
Oh, wow.
Is it upside down? No,
that's all right.
There's a seagull up here.
Yeah.
And he's kind of flying over the ocean.
Sure.
And then there's the sun, and then I have a Santa Monica lifeguard tower right there.
This is all inlaid on the fretboard for the people.
Yeah, this is all inlaid on the fretboard.
Yeah.
And this one was probably, I don't know, 200-300 pieces or something.
Yeah.
This is the spalted maple.
I
was talking about.
Yeah. So look, really.
So I just started
maple.
Yeah. So I started doing inlays like this, and I ended up building up kind of a portfolio here. And then people can go on the website, the Ohana Custom Shop site.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of these are listed on. Most of them are listed on there. And then I've had a couple people that call in with ideas.
Uh-huh.
And then I could just kind of make them happen. It's kind of like, if you go to a tattoo artist or something, and
sure, you
sit down and have a little consultation with them, and then you have an idea, and then they kind of bring it to life.
Uh-huh.
That's so far it's worked out really well. Where like I had one person that wanted a pure California uke. He wanted California wood. He wanted a field of poppies.
Wow.
California poppies on the fretboard.
Yeah.
And he just said, just give me a field of poppies. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just kind of drew it up. And I sent him the drawing, and he said, all right, go for it. And then I just put the whole thing together. It ended up being redwood, Claro walnut, and then a nice yellow field of California poppies.
Right on.
And beautiful instrument.
Yeah.
And that was one of the cases where he had kind of seen the work and just said, I want this guy to I'll give him an idea, and he can do what he wants with it.
Yeah.
And then speaking of the octopus one, I had another customer who I'd seen at the NAMM show a couple of years, and I took that octopus one I originally did. That was a tenor size, and she's a concert player. So I think the second year of the NAMM show, she finally just said, just make me a concert one. So I just kind of I had to do a complete redesign, and she just said, just do it. I trust you with it, and just kind of make it, she picked out some certain colors that she wanted for it.
Yeah.
With the woods that I had, and then I just went for it, and it turned out beautiful. So that was another case where they kind of saw the portfolio and then just said, okay, just kind of, here's an idea.
Yeah.
And just kind of make it happen.
That's so cool. So yeah, in order to get in touch with you, people go to the Ohana Custom Shop website, and
yes,
and then they can start somehow they find you through there. Like, there's ones that are already built waiting to be sold, and
right, there's a lot that's on there kind of waiting to be sold. But if you didn't want to order a custom one, there's a menu on there that you can kind of start that process. And you can just email as well,
Okay.
and we could take it from there. I'm really flexible as far as ideas and like wood choices and working with people.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a one man shop, so it's I kind of have a lot of freedom to do a lot of different things, which is cool.
Yeah. Yep. Who owns Ohana?
Who owns Ohana?
Yeah.
Louis Wu owns Ohana. I think he's about 10 or 15 years into the company.
Okay.
I think he's had it for quite a while. And at first it's I think it's one of the bigger ukulele companies out there. I mean, you think of the K brands, and then I think Ohana ranks up there as far as the size of a ukulele company and the recognition of ukulele brands.
Sure.
And he started with imports, as most people do, and he had ended up building up a lot of different models, and he had a lot of vintage models that were kind of unique to the brand. And he does, I was doing the setup, so obviously we set each instrument up here. It's not like they don't just ship it straight from the factory to your house. So it is kind of, a lot of his dealers kind of recognize that the time was taken to actually do the setups, and the instruments weren't cutting your fingers when you got them out of the box. And, it's a small company, so we end up kind of knowing a lot of the people that we work with, and have a lot of kind of friends that come around. And but now I think that's why he wanted the custom shop, was to elevate the brand.
Sure.
And it's kind of like just a natural progression of any company, I guess, to elevate your brand to the highest caliber that you can.
Yeah, of course.
And
You guys also sell strings manufactured under your brand?
Yes, he does. He packages them here. I think they're I forget what the kind of string they actually are, but it's a fluorocarbon, I believe, actually. Okay. But yes, he does have his own strings that he kind of packages here and sells here. I don't know too much about the side of the business, because I'm so busy with the custom shop.
Sure.
That I have kind of stepped away from being in that part of the warehouse and dealing with all that stuff. And I'm too busy, picking out wood and making stuff and dealing with these kind of customers. And so, I'm kind of my own entity at the moment within the Ohana brand.
And if somebody wanted a custom uke, say it wasn't anything too crazy, what's the turnaround for?
The turnaround, if it's not too crazy, I would say month and a half.
Okay, so pretty cool. Yeah,
it's generous. I could probably do something quicker than that.
Don't say that, because somebody's going to want something now.
I know. Well, that's the thing too, is it's sort of dependent on how many I have in line also. If there's no one in line, I could probably do one in a month.
Yeah.
But, at the moment, I have two on the shelf that I need to get into the paint booth, that are pretty simple build. The guy just wanted a matching tenor and baritone. He wanted Clara Walnut and cedar. And I have another one that I'm doing. Actually, I have it in my hand. This is a koa with a flower vine sound hole.
That's badass.
And this is an artist model. I did one of our artists, Bernadette. She I built her a custom unit. So she's kind of been promoting that. And I had one of her Patreons emailed in and said, I want one of those. So now I'm building one of those for her, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I've got those three, and then a bunch of other projects that aren't customer projects. But I would say, 2 months tops, if it's not complicated. I can, from start to finish, I can get you something.
Right on. That's great.
But if it's more complicated, it could take 3-4 months. If it's the something like the bubble uke or the seagull, those can take 3 or 4 months probably. But
sure.
And a lot of that time is tied up in somewhat design work and going back and forth with the customer and finalizing everything.
Yeah.
So those just mentally take a lot more time to do. Aside from the physical building part, it's a lot of like legwork to get there.
Yeah. Are you working a normal 40-hour week, or are you working? Are you working more than that?
Just 40 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
At first, when I had first started, I was kind of working at home, teaching myself how to do 3D modeling and programming, and but that was kind of on my own time, even though it was kind of for my job, but it was for my own. I felt like I was almost back in school in a way, like self-directed school, and I was just pushing myself to learn because I knew if I didn't do that, it would take me twice as long to get where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
So it's one of those sacrifices that you have to make, I guess.
Yeah.
But now I'm just 40 hours, and then I do my personal artwork on the side at home and focus on that when I can, because that kind of took the backseat for a while when the shop first started. I was so busy trying to learn everything at the same time as building everything that it just took so much time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been nice talking to you, Brad. I really appreciate you taking the time. You're a busy man.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for speaking with me.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, and have a great day.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to Have Guitar Will Travel. You can catch up on all the things I'm doing at thedeadlies.com, and I'm on all the social media platforms as well. And please support Vintage Guitar and all the wonderful things they do, because they do many, many wonderful things for us guitar players. Thanks. Please subscribe. Please tell a friend, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.